In this lesson, we will uncover the truth behind modern astrology, explain why it is a flawed system, examine the techniques astrologers use to mislead people, and clarify the Jewish law regarding consulting astrological advice. But before we dive deeper into this topic, it's important to clarify one key fact. The author of the book, Kosher Astrology, approached a well-known rabbinical authority in the United States, Rabbi David Cohen, requesting an endorsement for his book. He claimed that the book presents for the first time the authentic astrology of the sages. In recent years, however, the rabbi has generally avoided giving formal endorsements, mainly because he does not have the time to thoroughly review entire books. Therefore, he only agreed to provide a brief letter of blessing. He also made it clear that even if the claims in the book were accurate, offering personal astrological consultations and sessions to the public would certainly be forbidden according to Jewish law. Not long after, it came to the rabbi's attention that the author had violated this understanding. Not only was he offering consultations, but he was also misleading the public, claiming on the web and in various podcasts that he had received the rabbi's endorsement, a factor that significantly contributed to his book becoming a bestseller. More seriously, it became clear that, unlike the first part of his book, which consists entirely of teachings from the sages and their commentators, the second part, which teaches how to interpret the celestial chart in practice, is not Jewish astrology at all. Despite being presented as such, it is in fact nothing more than a direct adaptation of non-Jewish sources, what is commonly referred to today as modern astrology. Even more troubling, many of their foundations are based on Christian texts. As a result, this created the false impression that the rabbi had endorsed a work rooted in non-Jewish traditions, causing considerable harm to his reputation. For this reason, the rabbi requested that this clarification be made public.
I found out that there's a book called Kosher Astrology where I am totally misrepresented. I gave a michtav bracha because I've seen many a times that in the past when I gave askamas, I shouldn't have. So I only give michtav brachas. I should not have given even a michtav bracha. I've been totally misrepresented by the author of this book. He made it into haskama, and he's doing what I consider nefarious things with his total hanhaga. So not only do I disclaim it, I come out very strongly against everything that he is doing.
It is deeply unfortunate that several podcasts within the Orthodox community have fallen into this trap without proper verification. In doing so, they have effectively encouraged their audience to engage with astrology that is not kosher. Now, let's turn our focus to modern astrology. Modern astrology is considered one of the most successful deceptions of recent generations. According to astrology books, the planets are said to emit energies that influence human beings on Earth. Supposedly, much can be learned about a person's character and future based on the positions of the stars and zodiac signs at the time of their birth. In ancient times, when the nature of stars and planets was unknown, mystical forces and energies were attributed to them, believed to affect our world. However, today, when it is well known that planets are composed of dust, rocks, metals, or gases, it seems absurd to cling to the superstitions of the past. Beyond the fact that modern astrology lacks scientific basis, it can also be refuted through simple life observations. One of the clearest examples is the phenomenon of twins. Twins are usually born within minutes of each other. Although they are often physically identical, in many cases they differ greatly in personality and behavior. This is a striking and well-known fact. You will hardly find twins who are identical both in temperament and in personal traits. Astrologers build their predictions and personal analyses based on the zodiac sign rising in the eastern horizon at the time of birth. This rising sign changes approximately every 2 hours. Therefore, for most twins born minutes apart, their rising sign is usually the same. According to astrological logic, they should have very similar personalities, but in reality, They often don't. There is no doubt, when twins independently visit the same astrologer, they will receive the same analysis. Beyond this, there is a simple logical reason why modern astrology essentially collapses under its own weight. Think about the following scenario. An astrologer warns an expectant mother that her baby's approaching birth hour indicates a lifetime of bad luck. According to their logic, what is the solution? It's simple, just induce labor or schedule a cesarean section for a more favorable day and hour. Think about that for a moment. Are we truly to believe that one can outsmart the destiny of the stars simply by booking an appointment in a surgeon's calendar? Does a person's lifelong fate really depend on a hospital's scheduling availability? But this is where the absurdity deepens. Modern astrology claims that even the physical appearance of the newborn, their facial features and body structure, is determined by the hour of birth. To that, I ask, is it even conceivable that by changing the birth hour, we would change the baby's face? The physical structure and genetic makeup are already signed, sealed, and finalized in the mother's womb after 9 months of gestation. Can a surgeon's scalpel retroactively alter what nature has already shaped? When a person consults an astrologer without knowing their exact birth time, many astrologers claim that even the birth date alone is enough to draw significant conclusions about their personality and future. This claim is fundamentally false. We all know many people born on the same day who have entirely different personalities. This is a trick devoid of any real substance. There is no doubt it is a cynical exploitation of the client's trust and ignorance, done purely for monetary gain. There's a reason people often return to astrologers and willingly pay significant sums. It happens because in the first consultation, the astrologer nailed it, perhaps 90% accuracy in describing the client's personality. Sometimes, they even predicted difficult periods or key life events. So how is this possible? How can a stranger accurately describe someone's personality without prior knowledge? The answer is very simple. Astrologers present general traits and life events that are common to many people, yet phrase them in a way that feels uniquely tailored. Almost every day I hear people say, "You can't dismiss astrologers. They really do predict things accurately." But in truth, it's mostly deception techniques and use of generic content that can apply to nearly anyone. Some time ago, a man approached me requesting a personal horoscope based on his time of birth. He gave me his birth details, place, date, and time. I focused my eyes on the computer and spoke with him for about 20 minutes, describing his personality and aspects of his life. He was amazed at how much I seemed to know about him. Eventually, I revealed the truth, that the computer wasn't even turned on. I simply told him things that applied to and fit most people. Another friend bought an astrology book and read the description for his birth month. To his surprise, it seemed to match his personality almost perfectly. But when I asked him to read the descriptions for the other months as well, he was stunned to discover that they seemed to fit him just as well. In other words, modern astrology uses broad, vague, and flexible descriptions that allow anyone to find an apparent match, thus creating an illusion of scientific precision. There is a fascinating psychological phenomenon that explains why so many people believe in astrological predictions, even when they are vague or inaccurate. Humans tend to give disproportionate weight to information that seems to confirm their existing beliefs or self-image, while ignoring or forgetting information that does not align with it. This tendency, known as confirmation bias, leads a person to remember mostly the parts of an astrological prediction that resonated with them, and to dismiss the parts that were incorrect or irrelevant. In my youth, I was fascinated by astronomy and astrology. I began by learning the astronomical calculations of the sun and moon's movement according to Maimonides' method in the laws of sanctifying the new month. Later, I delved into NASA's most updated formulas for calculating planetary positions in the sky both in the past and the future. Then I discovered that the sages refer in many places to a discipline called the wisdom of the zodiac. Although this wisdom was highly secret, after many years of in-depth study, a significant portion of it has been revealed to me. Furthermore, after examining dozens of contemporary astrology books, I came to realize that modern astrology is not at all the same system our sages referred to. In fact, it differs fundamentally and often directly contradicts the principles of the Torah and ancient wisdom. Unfortunately, today there are astrologers who attempt to link modern astrology with that of the sages, seeking to justify its use in the name of the Torah. Some even go so far as to call it kosher astrology. But the truth is, it is a disgrace to claim that our sages engaged in or approved such a base and deceitful system. Such a claim is a direct affront to the honor of the great scholars and righteous leaders of Israel. Maimonides, the Rambam, strongly denounced astrology in several writings, including his famous Igeret Taimon. That letter was written after he was asked to respond to astrologers who had predicted the arrival of the Messiah on specific dates. Many misunderstood his words, fearing that he opposed the Talmud and Midrash. But this was not the case. The Rambam spoke specifically about the astrologers of his time, pointing out that their predictions were consistently wrong and that the good times they promised often became periods of exile and persecution. When examining the predictions made by astrologers in various media over the years, it's astonishing how many false claims have been made. If you look back at past forecasts, you'll find that most of the dire warnings, wars, pandemics, earthquakes, simply did not come true. And yet, when some war or disaster does occur, the astrologer quickly publishes a book or article titled, "The Astrologer Who Predicted the War," without anyone checking all the many previous predictions that never materialized. Astrological fraud becomes especially clear during elections, when astrologers split into two camps. Some claim Benjamin Netanyahu will win, while others predict victory for his opponent. Naturally, once the results are in, some astrologers will appear to have been right, since there were only two possible outcomes. That successful astrologer can then publish a bestseller entitled, "The Astrologer Who Predicted the Election Results." In this way, a system is created in which astrologers appear accurate, even though it's all a public illusion. When it comes to personal future predictions, astrologers use a slightly different approach. You'll never find an astrologer who predicts that you will meet your soulmate this week or find a job tomorrow. Instead, they push the good news a few months ahead, typically 6 months or more. They avoid firm commitments and only say that there is a strong potential for something to happen at that time. Because within that time window, many things could happen. Maybe you were introduced to a potential match and it didn't work out, but there was still potential. Astrologers aren't fazed when clients complain their predictions were wrong, and for good reason. Consider a hypothetical scenario. Let's say a lottery ticket vendor decides to go into the astrology business. Instead of barely scraping by selling tickets, he now offers a new service. He promises to predict the gender of your next child for just $10. He even offers a guarantee. If the prediction is wrong, he'll refund your money. Of course, this is an attractive offer, and it would be easy to get 10,000 clients in a few months. Since he heard that statistically, slightly more boys are born than girls, he simply tells everyone it will be a boy. Even if half the clients come back asking for refunds, the other half, those for whom the prediction came true, will spread the word that this astrologer was amazingly accurate, and tens of thousands more will seek his advice. The astrologer doesn't mind losing half his clients, because the other half will do his marketing for free. There is a clear and simple way to show that modern astrology is fundamentally flawed. There are dozens of different astrological systems: Indian, Babylonian, Egyptian, Greek, Chinese, and many others, and yet each one claims to be the most accurate and authentic. Worse still, astrologers divide the sky into 12 segments known as the 12 houses. According to tradition, each house corresponds to a different area of life. For example, the first house to personality and body, the second to money and income, the 10th to career, and so on. But when I examine this in depth, I discovered major disagreements on how exactly the sky should be mathematically divided into these 12 houses. I found at least 7 different systems, and each astrologer insists that his method is the correct one. Similarly, the progressions method, used to predict major life events, includes dozens of conflicting techniques. And yet, each one confidently claims to be the right one. Can we really rely on a system that is so fragmented and inconsistent? Clearly, this points to a complete lack of reliability in astrology. When people ask me whether Jewish law forbids engaging in astrology, the answer is not simple. Modern astrology is not considered avodah zarah in the direct sense, but it is absolute nonsense and a waste of time and money. However, it is important to note that most modern astrology books are full of concepts and terminology borrowed from paganism and Christianity. Therefore, we must understand the great harm caused by those who claim that modern astrology is the same wisdom practiced by the sages of Israel. There is a clear ruling in Jewish law. One may not consult astrologers. This applies even to forms of astrology that may not be entirely false, for it is ruled that if a person has already consulted an astrologer, he should heed the advice, since one should not rely on miracles. However, the real damage lies elsewhere. A person places his trust in the astrologer, instead of turning to God and praying with full faith that He hears our prayers, evidenced by the fact that we conclude each request in our central daily prayer with phrases such as, "Blessed are you, O Lord, who heals the sick of His people Israel. Blessed are you, O Lord, who blesses the years." So if the prayer has no effect, it risks becoming a blessing recited in vain. On the other hand, if a person doesn't see any result after his prayer, it may be because the individual himself is blocking its effects. Divine abundance may be flowing from above, but sometimes it gets blocked on the way down, and one must find ways to open the path for that blessing. However, this is not the place to expand on this topic. But if instead of continuing to pray, a person starts looking for shortcuts, he may find himself among charlatans, fortune tellers, mediums, and astrologers. A man once came to me and said he had always rejected modern astrology, but one particular experience shook his skepticism. On a day when he was feeling especially down, he came across a newspaper horoscope. Despite his doubts, he decided to read it, and to his astonishment, the prediction described his emotional state with remarkable accuracy. He was stunned and asked me, "How do you explain something like that?" His question was even more perplexing because newspaper horoscopes are known to be completely generic. They are based solely on monthly zodiac signs and nothing more. Could it really be that all people born in the same month were emotionally low in that same week? I answered that this has a deep spiritual explanation, which appears in the Talmud, Tractate Avodah Zarah, and is beautifully elaborated by the Marelus. The Talmud tells of a man who came to Rabbi Akiva and asked, "We know that idol worship is worthless, but why is it that broken people go there and return healed?" Rabbi Akiva answered that when God decrees that someone will fall ill, the day of his healing is already set in advance. The illness is meant to be a test or a wake-up call to inspire the person to repent and improve. But if the person fails to change, God may arrange things such that he happens to pass by an idol temple exactly on the day he was destined to recover. He will then falsely believe that the idol caused his recovery, a spiritual punishment for not repenting. In other words, healing always comes from God. But if someone chooses to trust in nonsense, God may allow him to be deceived as a form of consequence. This principle applies not only to idolatry, but also to astrology. An astrologer may occasionally say things that sound true, even though the system itself is false, because the person being advised chooses to believe in foolishness, so heaven allows him to fall for the illusion. This is what happened to the man who read the newspaper prediction. It just happened to align with his emotional state on that particular day. However, it's important to note, such surprisingly accurate moments are rare and fleeting. If a person keeps visiting such places, he will soon stop seeing any accuracy at all. The Jerusalem Talmud tells of a convert who was about to leave his house. Before departing, he checked his astrological chart and saw danger on his path. But then he said to himself, "Wasn't that the whole point of my conversion, to place my trust in God?" He went out anyway with his donkey and encountered a wild animal. To save himself, he abandoned the donkey, and by doing so, he survived. The Talmud asks, what caused him to fall into danger? Answer, his hesitation based on astrology. And what caused him to be saved? His ultimate trust in his Creator. The Talmud concludes, from this we learn, whoever practices divination, it will come upon him. In other words, believing in astrology may indeed lead to negative outcomes. Not because astrology has any real power, but because you invited that influence into your life by believing in it. Even if we were to assume that someone today truly mastered the authentic astrology known to the sages of Israel, I would still not recommend turning to them to learn what the future holds. Because the very act of engaging with astrology, of trying to know the future or even just one's potential future, strengthens the control of the stars over that person. By doing so, he acknowledges their influence. But the task of a Jew is to rise above the stars, so that they have no power over him. As the Talmud clearly states, there is no mazal for Israel. This is why, when people come to me for astrological advice, I don't speak about what the stars say about them. Instead, I try to guide them on how to rise above the stars' influence. And when a person truly elevates himself, it no longer matters what the zodiac says. Our sages tell the story of Abraham, our forefather, who lived before the giving of the Torah. He saw through the true astrology that he would never have a child, but God lifted him above the stars, and from then on, the stars had no hold over him. Since the giving of the Torah, every Jew has been given this same power, to rise above natural laws and astrological fate. Some astrologers try to convince people that knowing in advance about difficult periods can help them prepare and overcome them. But in truth, this can backfire badly. Instead of transforming a potentially difficult time into something positive, people often end up fulfilling the negative prediction themselves. This idea is beautifully expressed in the Midrash. God says, "Whoever trusts in my name, I will save him." As it says in Tehillim, "He who trusts in the Lord, kindness will surround him." And as stated, that true trust in God means a person is calm and unafraid of the future. So, if one truly believes that no harm will befall him, then no harm will come. Hence the saying, think good and it will be good. But when an astrologer warns you in advance of a bad date, it is only natural to begin worrying. That worry undermines your faith and destroys your spiritual protection. And that's exactly what the Torah warns us about. You shall be wholehearted with the Lord your God. As Rashi explains, don't meddle in predictions. It is worth including here the amazing words of the Baal Shem Tov. When a punishment is decreed in heaven upon someone who is deserving of punishment, the level of confidence is first taken away from him. For as long as a person has confidence in God, he cannot be punished. If you would like to experience a glimpse of the true astrology of the sages, you are welcome to visit my YouTube channel using the link below.